Sure. Councilmember Mock,
Present.
Councilmember Sayre,
Present.
Councilmember Henry,
Present.
Councilmember McKnight. I'll text her to see you, reminders. And Mayor Johnson.
Present. Thank you. All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning into tonight's work session. We value our residents and community members, and we want to make sure that everyone who wants to participate and provide input can do so. Work sessions are conducted to provide City Council with introductory information, opportunities to provide staff guidance, and facilitate initial conversations on the topic. City Council will not take formal action during the work session. There is not an opportunity provided for members of the community to provide comments or ask questions during the work session. Those interested in providing comments to the City Council related to the work session topic or any other related topic are encouraged to participate in community comment during the regular meeting that begins at 7 p.m. Check the city's website for information on joining that meeting later this evening. State statutes allow the city to conduct meetings by telephone, and the council recently took action to allow our city council and commission meetings to temporarily take place remotely during this pandemic emergency. This meeting is open to the public, but precautions as set forth by the Centers for Disease Control, Minnesota Department of Health, Carver County Public Health should be exercised. Alternatively, individuals can watch the meeting live via the city's website by clicking on the video link under upcoming meetings on the homepage at cityofcarver.com, or can join remotely via Zoom conferencing services. Zoom is a free service and can be accessed by the phone. On your mobile device, you can download the Zoom mobile app from the App Store or Google Play, or on desktop devices, you can log into Zoom.us from your computer or similar device. Or if you're just using the phone, the dial-in call number is 929-205-609. When prompted, enter the meeting ID 817-4553-3479 and the password 416886. So again, the meeting ID number is 817-4553-3479 and the password is 416886. For anyone who's joining by phone only, please be aware of these instructions. For broadcasting and recording this meeting, please mute your microphone to avoid distractions. You will also need to watch the online broadcast if you'd like to see any visuals presented during the meeting. The link is under upcoming meetings on the City Council. There could be a 1-minute delay from receiving conference call to speaking on broadcast, meaning that the call could be up to 1 minute ahead of what you're seeing and watching on the online broadcast on the City Council. We thank you for your patience and constructive feedback as we go through this unprecedented situation. We are working hard to ensure your voice is heard while maintaining everyone's health and safety. Right. With that, we are postponing tonight's HPC commission hearing. So, Mr. Harris, you're up first technically with the 18 draft ordinance.
I think you're good.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This matter was before the city at its last council meeting. I was given a fair amount of direction to come forward and craft an ordinance for your review. The council is aware, because you've been through this before, that the actual ordinance that modifies the code is kind of hard to read in a vacuum because it just shows the additions or the deletions. It doesn't really give the context. The direction from council was to bring back a draft to work through with you and then come forward with the final code. So in order to facilitate review, instead of actually drafting the ordinance, what I did was take what I thought the direction from the council was and just work it into the code. So you can see how it fits in the entire code. I'll take your direction tonight, and then at the next meeting, we'll have actually just the formal ordinance form, which will change the code. It's not nearly as readable as reading the revised code section. So that's why I did it that way, to facilitate review. I'll go through the highlights with you, and then we can get into the details. The ATV definition is essentially the statutory definition that we talked about the last time. The definition for a UTV is the statutory definition with one exception. It's been modified to include a rollover protection structure, which is the term of art for basically any type of a superstructure that goes over the cab. My research and investigation since the last meeting shows that such a structure is almost universal on the UTV. But for some reason, it's not on in the state statute, and rollover protection was something that was discussed repeatedly by members of the council, so I added it to the definition. As the council is well aware, the existing ordinance or code section that's being revised is really old. So it's got some archaic references into it. Trails are referred to as bike trails or bicycle trails, which isn't what the city refers to them, so I cleaned all of that up. Anywhere it said bike trail or bicycle trail, it now just says trail. The single biggest change in the curveball to all of you is the permitting requirement. I candidly didn't know where the council was going at the last meeting, so I hadn't dove into all the weeds of the statute, and to a certain extent, that's on me. But if you're going to allow UTVs, the enabling statute is crystal clear. You got to do it by permit, which is a pain, but I can't change what the statute says. The statute says you have to do permits for them. The permit process, you can make it very simple, so I took the simplest route and the most favorable route. The statute says you can run permits for up to 3 years. It says you can prescribe a very simple application about the only thing the application is going to call for is name, rank, serial number, and identify the UTV. And it also calls out, because the statute requires this, and this gets to a point Mr. Henry had at the last meeting, you have to provide evidence of insurance. The code, as I have drafted it, does not require the city to monitor insurance. It just states that when you submit the application for the permit, you have to provide evidence at that particular point in time that you have the insurance that's required by statute. The statute's pretty crystal clear about what's required. It's what is euphemistically referred to as motorcycle insurance. And any insurance agent knows what motorcycle insurance is. It's frequently done as a rider onto an existing policy. The other thing you should know is that this process and the requirement for a permit has been vetted and discussed with the county sheriff, and they go, yeah, that's the process. Daytime operation. This gets into the hand signal issue. The ordinance or the code sections I have drafted would allow a UTV to operate on city streets in the daytime, and it doesn't have to have lights. You can operate it with hand signals. At nighttime operation, sunset to sunrise, it has to have original equipment, headlights, taillights, brake lights, and additionally has to have lighted turn signals. I think that was the direction from the council the last time, and if it has that, it gets to operate. There are some exceptions in the ordinance as to when a UTV cannot operate. Those exceptions are, the first 3 are all statutory. That's what the statute says, and it's kind of stuff you think. They shouldn't operate in inclement weather, they can't operate in the fog, things like that. And they're basically word for word is what the statute says are exceptions. The 4th one is the more interesting one, is the one the council talked about quite a bit, and that's the JCP exception. And this says, the way it's drafted, it says that a UTV cannot operate on JCP. I crafted in one exception because we didn't talk about this. The way I've drafted the language, it will allow a UTV to cross JCP. There's always, you've got kind of an issue of, splitting the community. So it says that basically between the southerly connection with County Road 30 to the northerly city limits, a UTV cannot operate on JCP except to cross at a normal intersection. You can't cross anywhere in the middle. It has to go to an approved intersection and cross. At that point, that has also been vetted with the county, and they are okay with that. Recognize that the county is ultimately the road authority, and if the county ever decides to do something different on JCP, they could. I would tell you that my sense after discussing it, particularly with the county attorney, is they're probably not going to. They kind of agree that it makes sense that they shouldn't have UTVs up and down JCP. And I told her, but this isn't an issue on County Road 30. It was just, the council was pretty adamant that there were safety concerns on Jonathan Carver Parkway. There's a provision that deals with mowing equipment and where you can operate equipment that's used for mowing and where you can use ATVs for snow plowing. The old code section had what I would call the neighborly provision, which basically says, okay, even for ATVs, if you're not supposed to use them, if you've got a snow blower or a plow on it, you can run out the street to run over your neighbor's driveway and plow your neighbor's driveway. And I saw we didn't talk about that specifically. We did talk about a unilateral or a total prohibition on ATVs. It seemed to me that that kind of use is the kind of use that gets encouraged in Carver, and we wouldn't want to stop that. So actually, I cleared that up a little bit and made it clear that under that circumstance, you could use an ATV. on city streets. That's kind of the summary of what's in the meat of the code sections in front of you. This is the part where, this is the legislative process. It's the making of the sausage. If there are questions, comments, concerns, that's why we're here tonight. As I understand it, what I'm going to do is take any comments you have, any changes that you want to see. I'll put it into a true ordinance section, and it'll be available for adoption at your next meeting. So I'm here to answer any questions you have.
So Larry, just real quickly, just to clarify, and my geometry could be off, but it says a 90-degree angle at an improved intersection. If we're talking just crossing straight over.
We're talking crossing straight over.
It'd be 180 degrees, right? 90 degrees of writing.
Geometry?
Geometry, right? 90 degrees, right angle.
Yep.
Or they can take two 90 degrees.
Let me bask in this moment. This is the first time I've ever run right with a math question.
All right, yep, you're absolutely right.
All right, okay, I just
Yep,
wanted to
yep.
clarify that. Okay, questions, comments, concerns?
I have a few questions. When we talked about the permitting process, if it statutorily has to be done, it does.
It does.
When you said motorcycle insurance, so a lot of people have these, I believe, under their homeowner's insurance?
They do.
Well, does that qualify as this, or
Yeah,
it has to be?
they can get it as a rider on their own. It can get issued that way too.
Okay.
The code section that is referred to in your, the statutory site that is in the ordinance is to the specific type of insurance that's required, and it's universally called motorcycle insurance.
Okay, okay.
I mean, that's just what everybody calls it.
Okay, so we're not asking them to take out anything special from
No.
what they might already have.
My understanding from my investigation is if you have a UTV and you have it insured already, you have this insurance. So I don't think we're putting a burden on anybody.
Okay. This next part's more of a comment for the permit. Being that City Hall is only open Monday through Friday, daytime hours, is this something that we can have online where you just fill in the boxes and send it in, and then that way it files into our system through our new website?
It depends, because we'll likely have to issue some type of sticker,
Okay.
and we'll need to have proof of it, so there'll be some type of transaction. It wouldn't be something where you could apply for it and then get it that same day.
So, okay, so could they apply with our new system, or maybe with our old, so are they able to apply online, pay for it online with a credit card, and then it would be mailed to them? I just want it to be as easy as possible,
Yes.
because not everybody's available to come in Monday through Friday.
Yeah, we could certainly facilitate an electronic process. I can't, even if it's just emailing PDFs and or sending in an application, we can do that. We do that with our building permits.
Okay. Because most people have the capability to fill that in even on their phone. They send a picture along with it of their insurance card, if that's what it is, or they fill in the box about it, but,
Yeah, I just have to connect with
Sure.
our team just to see what we're capable of right now.
okay. My next thing I want to talk about is the County Road 11, the Jonathan Carver Parkway. So when you said that the county is fine with it, that's fine, they're fine with it, but they take no stance on it, is what I've been told from the county. So,
We have the right to regulate it unless they decide to do different. If the county decides to do
Right.
something, adopt a different regulatory scheme on their road, they get to do that. But they're going to stand by and they will abide and enforce what we put in.
okay. Because it's my understanding right now that on other county roads in Carver County, from when I spoke to them, that they just take a no stance approach on it. So by no stance, it's allowing it.
Here it'll be different. Once we adopt an
Right.
ordinance saying no, they're going to enforce it.
So let's put in a scenario here. If you want to take off south of 40, County Road 40, and head down to Main Street West and head down on the county roads that way, we now are requiring you to drive through town to get to the end of 40 to take off on the county road to go south of town here. Is that correct? Like, you won't be able to jump out to get to the shortest route out of town. You're going to have to drive through town in order to get to a place where you can get
You're-
on County Road.
My understanding is the direction of the council is they do not want to see UTVs on JCP, so.
Some of the council, not for me though.
Well, I understand you're the one that doesn't.
Yep, with having them on JCP. Now, if they want to go to Fleet Farm, they're going to have to come around here, go out Carver that way, come back up through, up 61, and then come back up to get to Carver, or to get to Fleet Farm. And I think that's a little bit silly. They're able to keep up with the right speed. They're going to have all of the things that a car is going to have when it comes to brake lights, front lights, turn signals, things like that. I think that it's a little bit unrealistic to say, hey, it's great that you're coming here and you want to go to Fleet Farm, but we're going to make it a really roundabout way. You have to drive that way to that way to that way to that way to get there. Or if you want to come into Carver, you can't come down 11. We are now pushing you through all the residential areas to get to where you're going. So I'm struggling with this part of it because to me it seems like we're making it harder for people.
What I'm struggling with is, I understand your concerns, but right now it's illegal for them to be on the streets, and they're buzzing everywhere. So they're going to do it anyway, and well, let's just leave it up to enforcement. They'll know where they can and where they can't go. If it's an inconvenience for them to stay off JCP, so be it. I mean, they'll be able to buzz across it. But as far as how many of them are on the roads right now, knowing full well that it's illegal for them to be on the roads, to me, I don't see that as a major, because if they're coming in from outside of town, they can come in, was it 43? That goes out to Dahlgren, and they can come down 6th Street or Dahlgren Road, and they can buzz across. There's so many ways they can get into town. They're going to.
Right.
And if they're going to be legal, they're going to do it. And if they don't want to, I don't see a problem with it.
So I'm also uncomfortable with just carrying it all the way down to Main Street. That's a big area, but it's also there's not a lot of turning in and out. The school isn't right there. You're going by the gravel pit, and then you're actually beyond the no-fly zone. So I'm trying to work through this to see how we can make this so it makes sense and it's convenient that it makes sense, that we're not just making it more difficult on people for no reason.
It's illegal right now.
Right, but it won't be.
I get that.
And we also, a lot of
Pending
the
approval, it
people,
won't be.
right, and a lot of the people who were on the roads were not aware that it was illegal in town. I've had a number of people who've asked, is this right?
Ignorance of the law
Who
is no
sent-
excuse.
And the folks who sent
Yeah,
emails
they know it is
saying
now.
that they're in
Sure.
favor are the ones who are still buzzing past.
I don't know, I'm not a cop, I don't go after them in town, so
No,
I
I
won't
was gonna
know.
say, I know, but the neighbors who sent emails, I see them still out, so
So your
I think that's what
experience tells you
Larry's
that.
getting to.
I'm just thinking of,
Larry.
in 5 years, all the traffic that's going to be on JCP. I'm looking out for their safety in their utes, more so than, I mean, in a 30-mile-an-hour zone or in 45 over on 61, they're fine with that. But I look at it just as a traffic concern.
So they are allowed to be on Carver County roads, which is 55 miles an hour generally. They are allowed that. So to say that, well, it's better that they're on 30 or 45, maybe, but they are allowed on county roads going 55. So it's not that they're.
And most of those
nowhere
county
near.
roads are two-way traffic as well.
So if we want to go back to two-way traffic, then the bottom of 6th Street, we basically head back down to two-lane traffic, don't we? We have a little bit of room there where we overlap right after the roundabout.
By the fire
Yeah.
station.
So, because 5 years from now, we can't necessarily predict what's going to happen 5 years from now. If we really feel that I'll call the school zone, we'll call the school zone of JCP, might be too busy and too dangerous, why don't we stop it then at 6th Street for now?
I have some thoughts on these.
Please, go.
In my observations and just opinion, I don't think that people are like trying to do this illegally. I think it's been such a gray area, and it still is, I think the whole point of this ordinance is just to be clear on what we allow, what we don't, and where. So I think we just need to focus on that. We can't really get into hypotheticals of what it'll be like from years from now. So I am in favor of them using JCP to get from place to place, and not just to cross, but be able to use it. And just let them use their own discretion on what county roads they want to be on, what county roads they don't, what time of day they want to be on there. But I don't like the idea of, if we only allow them to cross, they're really going round zigzag, roundabout ways. If there's concern about the school, we could, I'm not concerned about it, but we could possibly maybe then restrict that area's off limits during school hours, school days. Just kind of like there's already the signs about, I forget what the signs exactly say, but it's usually posted about the school zone and certain times of day. Yeah, so as far as JCP, I'd like to just treat it like any county road, that they can use it to go up and down, to get from place to place. And if the county down the road supersedes us with something, then we'd have to go with that. So that's where I'm at with that. Like Councilmember Mock's ideas on the permitting, thank you for the 3 years. I think that helps simplify it. But if it's something that could be done by mail, I mean, I understand it's a process, get the paperwork, and issue stickers or whatever we end up doing. But as much as that we could do, whether it be via mail or whatever we have set up. My other thing that I wanted to ask about was the aftermarket or OEM is, as far as taillights or
Turn signals.
Is that come from a statute?
No.
Or is that just kind of what you?
When the council talked at the last meeting, one of their criteria that I left with is that at nighttime operation, they wanted to see turn signals on the vehicles. The statute requires for nighttime operation that you have original equipment, headlights, taillights, and brake lights. Silent is to turn signals. The council, as a policy basis, said we want to see turn signals. That's why the language in the code says they can be aftermarket. So that met what I understood the need of the council was, which is we want to see turn signals on them. So I put in that they could be aftermarket.
Okay, that's what I had wanted to ask, because it's my understanding too, sometimes it depends what year the model was, or, but, okay, so. Yeah, so those are my kind of little things, but back to that kind of main thing, I think, where we need to get to a consensus is crossing and using JCP and/or.
I'm for using JCP. Let's have people get to Fleet Farm and be able to get there.
Let's give Joy. Go ahead, Joy.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I was the one who brought up JCP in our last meeting anyway, so I'll speak on this. After some reading of the Minnesota Driving Guide State Guidelines, and educating myself better on signals and things like that, also taking a look at the proposed changes to the ordinance around daytime and nighttime usage, as well as the requirement for the rollover protection structure on UTV, I've kind of lost, that's really assuaged my fears around JCP. I was just worried a little bit about the amount of traffic that's on that road, as well as the speed. But I think the way that we've written this ordinance really well defines safety on any road. And so I'm gonna take back any concerns I expressed in the last meeting about allowing UTVs on JCP. I'm okay with it. I didn't have any other comments or question on the ordinance. I think Larry did an excellent job taking all of our feedback. I only have one super minor picky thing, and that Steamboat Days is not capitalized in the ordinance as proposed.
All right, Larry's jotting down a note. You can't see him, Joy, but he is scribbling feverishly. All right, is that it, Joy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Glenn, I don't think you had a chance.
Just to clarify, taillights or turn signals were specifically for use at night, correct?
Correct.
Thanks.
That's it? So as far as, it sounds like we're all pretty happy with how this turned out, aside from the JCP no-fly zone, which I like that term. but I think that Glenn and I might be the only ones who are in favor of keeping it in. So that seems like it needs to be taken out.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other direction or anything else you want to share with Larry? Yeah.
Just have one clarification question, thinking about the permitting. Do we need to have language in the ordinance, Larry, that would require the permit holder to display the permit on their vehicle, or what's the? I just think of, like, I don't want the deputies to continuously stop vehicles that are driving,
For a piece of
asking for
paper.
permits, but I
Aren't they
also
like a boat?
recognize that there might be some owners that don't want to put a Carver sticker on their vehicle, so I just wanted to get some clarification.
We can require that. It's not any issue to require.
It's like a boat sticker, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's a good idea, otherwise they're just gonna keep pulling over, can I see your paperwork?
Yeah, exactly.
That's silly too, so it's a waste of time.
And to be clear, that's for any UTV that needs to be or wants to be
Right,
operated in
day
the
or
city.
night.
Doesn't matter where they're.
Day or night, they've got to have a
homeowners
sticker, and it
are.
doesn't matter, yeah, if they're, you know, if they're driving up from Belle Plaine, they have to have a Carver sticker.
Okay. Okay, and technically that's the process for every community regardless.
That's what the
of
statute
how
says.
closely they adhere to it.
That's what the statute says, yeah.
So, here's a hypothetical. Somebody's going from Belle Plaine to, let's say, Victoria, and they come up JCP, and they don't have a Carver tag. Can they get tagged?
Yes. Will they? Probably not.
All right. Do you have enough direction for
I do.
us? Okay, awesome. I think that's all from us. Thank you, Larry. All right, moving on to item number 4, the water treatment plant update.
Oh, Larry.
Mr. Lannis, go ahead.
Yep.
Oh.
Do you mind if I have Larry just address one issue with the council?
Yeah, oh, stand by, Dan.
I
Okay.
thought you had another one, Brenda.
Okay.
All right,
I talked to Larry. There's been recent issues related to some properties violating historic preservation guidelines, and I just wanted Larry to just address what our code allows for and let the council ask questions
Sure.
on kind of their general satisfaction with that ordinance, et cetera.
The HPC code provisions allow the city to do one of two things when there's a violation of the HPC performance standards that would require a certificate of authorization. The city can either red tag the construction, stop the construction. The city can also, if the city manager authorizes, commence an enforcement action against the individual. I can tell you in my rather long tenure here, we've not done enforcement actions, and the problem with enforcement actions is they're civil actions, they're expensive. We spend a lot of money on attorney's fees, and so we've tended to avoid that. We have red tagged projects lots of times in the district when they come up. So those are really the two remedies that are available if there's a violation of what would require a certificate of authorization under the HPC ordinance. Usually red tagging has been effective. I understand that the incident that gives rise to this, the construction may already be done. So then, I mean, candidly, what you would be doing at that point is, if you wanted to enforce it, you'd be effectively, it's under the code, it's Brent's decision. August privilege of being a city manager. But it would be a civil action for an injunction to cause the property owner to remove the improvement. Those don't go down easily because the property owner is backed into a corner and is going to fight hard.
And so I just wanted to have the council or Larry tee this up with the council, because right now it's the red tag or kind of Armageddon, if you will. And so if the council wants a different set of remedies, that's something we could study and connect with the city attorney on, but just wanted to get some feedback before we did anything, frankly.
Larry, do you know how, I know we've had other construction-related stop work orders. Do you know how this aligns with just if I was to build a garage or a shed that was not in code?
Yeah,
in my
typically,
yard?
the garage or shed, the shed issue.
Just
shed-
any violation really
Yeah,
is.
let's use a shed because that's a common one we run into. The shed violation is usually twofold. One, they don't get a building permit because thinks they need a building permit to put a shed in their backyard. Well, you do. Yes, you do. And two, it's a setback violation because inevitably they build it within, you know, they're encroaching on the setback or the side yard or the rear yard, drainage and utility easements. Those are pretty easy because if we catch it before they're too far into the project, we just go out and tag it. We have the building official go out and tag it and it stops. And it's, you know, a little painful, but we get it worked out with staff.
Larry, can you be a little, Joy can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joy. Is that better?
Thumbs up, okay.
Okay, sorry, Joy, I'll get closer to the microphone. So, you know, the red tag process works well on outright building code or building violations where there's an ongoing construction project. Candidly, red tagging doesn't work very well when the work's already done. So, you know, that's troublesome. Usually we find these pretty quickly and we're able to get the work stopped. And I don't say we do them a lot, but we probably issue a red tag every year or two for something. And the issuance of the red tag is usually enough to secure compliance and get what we've done. And candidly, in a timely, cost-effective, and usually conciliatory manner, because once you kind of, there's an education process with the property owner, and once you get through that, they usually comply willingly, occasionally not. You know, we've had a couple of tough ones over the years.
Is there also, so I'm just wondering if that aligns with the HPC's regulations. So is there a civil option then for the shed?
Oh, sure. We could do the exact same thing with the shed. I mean, we could commence litigation to tell them to remove the encroachment they built in the setback, or more frequently, they built on our drainage and utility easement.
Okay, but there's no fine structure, there's nothing, it's very similar.
Yeah, the fine structure is, you got to be really careful about this because candidly, the fine doesn't really provide the remedy that the city wants. And a little bit of this is be careful what you ask for if you put in a fine structure, because you might have people who say, fine, I'll just pay the fine. You know, you want compliance. In the HPC, you very much want compliance for aesthetic reasons. In the rest of the community, you want compliance for neighborly reasons and candidly for preserving conservation easements and drainage and utility infrastructure that the city has. So I'm not saying you couldn't impose a fine structure, but I'd be cautious about it because I don't think it's going to really get you what you want.
Got it, okay, thank you.
I'd like to, yeah, well, I'm the HPC liaison, so some of this came up at our last HPC meeting. There's a number of people who will come to the HPC when they have work they want to do, and then there's a number of people who don't. So who don't, and then you'll just see that things are getting done. So what their kind of concerns were, I guess I'll put it as concerns were, is that there isn't any teeth behind what they're doing. So you're relying on just the good-naturedness of people to go about it the right way. So then when you tell someone, no, this isn't approved or this is approved, if you say this is not approved and they go forward anyways, there's no teeth behind what you've told them. So their question was, what are we doing here if we're just approving things? It's nice to help guide people, but if there's no teeth behind what we're requesting, there's no teeth behind it. And, there's a few things that they have seen around town that they would maybe address, but they don't know how to address them. And I think that they're finding it a little bit frustrating because they don't know where to put the teeth in and where they can't. So I don't know that a fee or a fine is the right way. Does a fine starts to put the awareness to people that, hey, if I decide that I'm going to blow this off and sneak it under the radar, if I get caught, there might actually be a repercussion because that word will travel, that somebody had a repercussion for doing that. What that looks like, obviously I have no idea. But that's where some of the concerns and I guess the frustration and I guess a little bit of lost of where they should go from here came from at that meeting.
One
I just
thing.
want to be clear, I'm not advocating necessarily for a fine structure. I just was asking if it was part of the
No, and I'm not either. I'm actually saying maybe the fine structure is something we look at because at least it tells people that this is serious. You actually should be following the protocols that are set in place by the city if you choose to live in the historic district. Not that I want to fine anyone, but how do we make it happen?
You got to be really, really careful about a fine structure in the HPC because let's say we adopt a sliding scale of fines and maybe the and there are kind of limits as to what we could impose as a fine. Maybe the top fine's $1,000, and somebody wants to completely redo the facade of a historic structure. They say, fine, I'll write you the check for $1,000. I mean, so that's,
Right.
you know, that's the scenario that
But
really
would they have
scares
done it
me.
anyways? If they're willing to pay the fine to have it?
Well, the issue
They've
is
gone out and done it without us?
but the issue is if they're going to start doing a major facade renovation without the consent of the HPC and without a certificate of authorization, it's a large project. You can go out and red tag it, and candidly, at that point, they're going to need a building permit anyway. So we have other means to stop the more significant ones.
Sure. So do we have any idea what other cities who have these districts, what they do for enforcement of their guidelines?
They're largely in the same position we are, and candidly, it becomes they pick their battles. There's no nice way to say it. They pick their battles in terms of what they're going to do and what they're going to enforce. You know, enforcement dollars and enforcement of civil remedies like this is expensive.
Okay. Any other questions?
I do, and it might be for a future work session. And then just a quick comment. I agree that it should not be a fine structure. I don't want to have easier to ask for forgiveness and permission, forgiveness, pay the fine, and permission. So this might be for a different meeting. And I don't have much experience at all with the Historic Preservation Committee. Can a homeowner just say, I want my home taken out of the district? Or is that just impossible?
No.
Or is
It's
that
not possible. Well, no, it's not possible very easily.
Okay.
And not really without not once it's designated and it's in the district,
It's a lot of
it's an
undoing.
arduous process.
Is it costly to us as a city or the homeowner or both?
More to the homeowner, but yeah, there's some cost to the city. I've had that come up in other communities. I've never seen that come up in Carver.
Okay.
There was before you were on council, there is a house that's in some pretty terrible shape.
Yeah.
And the new owner was kind of asking some questions about potentially having the home knocked down. And it was going to be such a process that I think that that's what swayed them
Okay.
to try to save it. So it's
Okay.
not easy from what I understand.
Okay.
So in the end, I think there's enough here where I can work together with Larry and bring some information back and just have it as an agenda item. I was gonna bring this up under my update, but we wanted to cut Larry loose here, so.
Okay.
Just, Glenn, you haven't had a chance. Joy shook her head no. Okay.
All right. Thanks all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too. All right. Now, Mr. Lannis, you are up with the water treatment plant update.
Before,
No, you're not, Dan, sorry.
before Dan gets started, just for those folks that are watching via live stream, and then those on the call, I just wanted to play the video that we've posted to the website and other social media accounts related to this project, and then they'll print it over to Dan as it relates to a summary of where the project's at, and then a summary of the neighborhood open house that we had last week.
The city of Carver has grown and changed since it installed its first water treatment facility in 2004. With the population tripling since 2000, the city's current water treatment facility is reaching maximum capacity. The current system can process about 1.2 million gallons per day. Projections show that the demand for city water will increase to over 1.3 million gallons per day within just a few years, and will over double current demand by 2040. In response to this, the city of Carver is planning to expand the current water treatment facility to meet the demand. This expansion is expected to add 1.5 million gallons of capacity per day to over double current city water supply capabilities. Construction on this critical project is anticipated to begin in the late fall of 2020. The expansion is expected to be fully built and operational by the summer of 2022 to stay ahead of the increasing demand for water in the city of Carver. For several
Thank you. Dan?
All right, Brent, can I get the screen? I just had a few PDFs that I could bring up here.
Right,
Is
should be
that
set.
right?
Yep.
Okay. So let's see. All right, does everybody see it?
Yep.
City of Carver water system expansion? All right, we're off and running. I know chills go through your spine when I bring up a presentation here, but this is not a long one, so it's just gonna give you some visuals here. I'll get full screen here. Let's see.
Keep going down, full
Full
screen.
screen. Yep, there we go. Thank you. All right. So what we're going to cover today here is water system progress to date, just where we've been and where we are now. Open house feedback. We'll give you a couple of starts later this year in the late fall, or most of this would be happening this year. The water treatment facility expansion, after a year of went through an alternatives analysis, that was January through December here, preliminary layout final design, which was after authorization, that was February, August. So we're in the final design phase right now. Our bid documents, permitting is ongoing right now with the agencies that facility. And then what we're planning for some harder milestones is August 17th will be approval of plans and authorization to advertise. Estimated bid date is September 24th. And award for the contract, and will be applicable to both of them, is October 5th is what we're planning. And then for the water treatment facility, it's a long effort year, construction of 18 months. That's November of 2020 all the way to 2020. So we're looking for this to be online by summer 20, just current plan. So this is where it's all obviously going to be concentrated, your existing site, as a reminder. And this will be the construction area after the work starts here. So they're going to take up a large area. We are suggesting a road closure for the duration of construction at this point here for the contractor staging, and to a degree for the safety of people that would be going down this road with all the activity that's happening in this area. So this is, we'll say, holding construction. What we want is need is probably a strong term, but it's strongly needed for an open site that's reasonable to store materials that have to work hard to build this area. Try and stay on the existing site, but it's also suggested for safety, just so we're not intermixing the residential traffic with the construction. So anyway, that would be the zone for better part of 18 months. So this is what they're trying to build. You've already seen this already, but they're trying to build this expansion out right here. And just a few interesting pictures for you if you'd like to see how this all plays out. Just for those of you who are curious about the details, it's a little different than the video rendering here that was done prior to some more advanced design modifications that we feel are going to be cost savings on the project. So a few things moved that we think are going to be more efficient for construction. So if you're interested in how this all works, that little purple thing over there is this aerator. That's where the water comes into with air in the water to help with the filtration, get some of the elements out that we're trying to filter out. That goes into these retention tanks, and then in the middle of this gate is a filter that goes into those filters and out. So here's all the piping that's being designed that goes from the well water, or comes in right here into the aerator, it goes over here, filters, well, here's chemical feeds where they put in chemicals to treat the water. So that's what is brought in all these plans in detail right now. And the inner workings of this system that's being designed, we're going to just pop that up real briefly. And then August 17th, you can expect, if we're going for schedule, here's a request for council action to approve those plans that are being assembled right now and authorization to advertise the project with potential suggested bid date of September 24th. We can move that a little bit. But another council action of October 5th to award the project, the water treatment facility, and likely the raw water main project. And we've been looking at probably late fall, November of 2020, all the way through May of 22 for the water treatment facility construction. So the one thing I'll remind you of is that the raw water main is probably going to be the project that people notice more. It's going to be much more visible across the community as the traffic occurring and drilling and things of that nature. So we'll be focusing specifically on communication. That everyone will know what to expect them. So I'll open up any questions if you have any.
Questions? Go ahead, Glenn, you look like you have one.
Yeah, Dan, can you go to the map of the property where the well is going to be dug, drilled.
Okay?
Whose farm is that out there? What property is that?
It's Meridian Fields.
Thank you. That was my only question.
Okay. Brent, can you do the Brady Bunch viewer so I can see Joy? Or Joy, we're going to get you back up so I can see if you have any questions, but does anybody else? Lori? Go ahead, Lori.
I had a question on the suggested road closure. Looks like a good solution because I can't imagine, I mean, I know there's a good alternate route. What feedback, if any, did you get at the open house or any responses to communication on that suggested road closure?
On the road closure? Yeah, I mentioned it to the residents that I spoke to. I didn't get a notable concern. I think there's some understanding that this was going to be a lot of activity in the area. So the big comment I got is, as long as you're leaving the other road open, so they're not landlocked.
Okay.
I guess is the general comment that I was getting. So it didn't seem to be a problem at that time. So.
No other questions, thank you.
All right. Joy, I did see you raising your hand. Go ahead.
Councilmember Sayer asked the exact same question I had, so I'm good.
Oh, okay. Christy?
Thanks.
Sure. Can you go back to one of the pictures of the building as it looks in 3D? Dan?
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's
I
good.
can look at it in front. Go ahead. Sure.
Which one?
Something where it shows the entire lot.
Which one? What?
Oh, sorry. It would help if I had my microphone on. Yes, this is fine. Do you have an aerial, like a straight down view of that building and the lot? On one of your slides here. Did you look at it? Do you have a top view?
Well, only when I brought up here right now, so it just didn't matter which slide you want me to go back to.
Right. Do you have one that has just the top view of it with the actual proposed section of building?
Let's see, well, you're looking for like the design?
I did.
I don't have like.
Okay, this will be fine then. Yep, this will be fine.
This is the closest I have, so.
Okay, go back to the other one. Nope, you're going too fast. Go back 2 slides. Yes, stop. Okay. So this one, so I noticed that where we are doing the expansion it's in the center, I guess, of the building. It's centered on the building. Does this allow us to expand further should we need to? Or is that not even something that is possible on this site after this expansion?
So, I missed the first part of your question here, I couldn't quite hear it.
Okay, so the building where we are expanding seems to be very centered on the building rather than to one side or the other on that property. So if we build it centered to the building, does that allow for future expansion should we need it? And is that even possible on this site, or will this fill out the expansion in its entirety that we could do in this area?
I guess the way I have to answer that is we are taking up the reasonably accessible available space to expand with this expansion right now. We're taking as much as we can. We have what you have for limitations is you've got some setbacks from the well, and you've got the water tower, and over here we wouldn't be able to expand because of the reclamation tank. So the short answer to your question is this site is going to be pretty well maxed out after this path. Yeah, the long answer I suppose would be, in theory, you could abandon a well, you could abandon the water tower, you could possibly try and buy more land. I mean, you certainly could make a shot at expansion, but building new would likely be the preferred alternative at that point.
Okay, so the reason I was asking is that I didn't want us to be building it in a way, if we had expansion possibilities, that we would position that in a way that we could expand onto it later. But what you're saying is this is basically the best we have at it, and this is the entirety of the expansion we're gonna be able to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing the best we can to make the space usable right now, and we're filling it up.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, I just had one question and one comment. I have no concerns with the road closure. That seems to make sense. The last year's 2019 street construction project up off of Kirchy was kind of, the staging area was right by my home, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, even more so when it's a brick and mortar construction. So if we're gonna need the space, I say this is a inconspicuous enough spot to close down to allow for room for that. And then my only other question is, and I know it's been a while, but at one point we were seeing the addition to the north instead of to the east. And I think I have my directions right, so closer.
Yep.
What, can you walk me through just quickly the change there?
Yeah, I can explain that. We did look at it to the north because of the reclamation tank, because underneath this facility is it's called the backwash tank. It's where they backwash the filters and put water into the tank. When they do that, so it's a necessary part of the overall treatment system. So they opted to avoid that tank in their initial planning and built to the north, like kind of a separate facility. It almost would have operated as two separate treatment facilities because it was not really connected to the existing filters or aeration or anything like that. What we did as we got into the final design process, or we'll say the preliminary layout process, was we did an evaluation of the cost to remove this replant tank and the savings gained by building everything contiguous, tied together, and we priced it out to be cheaper.
Perfect.
Actually move this tank and tie the water treatment processes together, and there were some structural reasons why it worked a little bit easier to take this high roof line and just carry it out. Otherwise, you're gonna build a high roof line over here. And all in all, I guess to bring it to a short answer, it was cheaper to build this way, and it fit.
Perfect. I was gonna say, you had me at cheaper, Dan. Thank you.
All right.
That answers my question. An engineer's short question, short answer. All right. I don't know that we have any other questions. This is a work session, so. Rolf, I see that your hand is up, but we have an agenda to move through here. And at the beginning of the work sessions are generally not intended for feedback. So we work through, because we don't vote up or down, you're welcome to come back to the council meeting at 7 o'clock and provide your comments during the community comment section. So with that, I would like to continue to roll through the. Yeah, the public comment, you're always welcome to the meetings, Rolf, to mention anything during those sections of the meeting.
I would also just like to, kind of for anyone, remind them that our emails are on the website. Happy to get an email. Just address it to the entire council if possible. If there is something you wanted to share, or whoever is else with them there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lori. Okay, Mr. Merrick, long-term financial plan review.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm just gonna go over the long-term financial plan. In your packet, we put the plan that the council last viewed in January. The city maintains a long-term financial plan that identifies future capital equipment, infrastructure projects, staffing, operation, and maintenance needs. The plan assesses the financial impact of those needs, along with the corresponding tax or utility rate impact for those investments in the areas of the general fund, water, sanitary, sewer, and stormwater funds. And so we wanted to take this opportunity before we kind of jump headfirst into the 2021 budget and put this in your packet. Since we have some new leadership, for example, Chad Shell is the Public Services Director, we wanted to take an opportunity for Chad to kind of right-size at least the equipment pieces and then talk about the infrastructure projects with staff, and then potentially make some new recommendations as far as plan amendments. So again, for capital equipment, Chad will be running through the existing plan with his team and making recommendations for changes. We're also going to be verifying our existing infrastructure plans, looking at future needs based on future years, because every year that we go on, we're planning for additional years. So we've been talking about the water treatment plant for the last 10 years. As we grow, there'll be another project looking at the utility rate impacts, tax impacts, and then kind of finally why we brought this item to the council tonight is, are there any kind of guiding philosophies or questions, areas that you want us to look into as we kind of dig into the long-term financial plan? We don't really need to have any answers, just areas that you really want some more information on, that you think need to be reassessed, so on and so forth. So with that, I'd open it up to the council for any questions that you might have.
Questions, comments?
Brett, when I'm looking at the years and positions,
Can you say what page you're on?
it is on 8 of the MetaViewer, and the actual page is 7. So it says assumptions, and it says the city has assumed the following positions will be added over the next 10 years. So obviously we're through 2020 here with deputy clerk, but when we're looking forward to planner and public utilities superintendent, I mean, those are 2 years from now that we're looking at those.
Yeah, I would say that would be that'd be a great example of an area that will adjust if the custodian piece is not something that we're going to pursue. We've changed over from having a full-time staff to contracted staff, and so I can assuredly say that you won't see that custodian position in the 2021 budget. Similar to the planner and public services utility superintendent. Those are conversations I want to include Aaron and Chad on and say, okay, where are we at with this? I think one of the challenges with growth is sometimes you can kind of overeat a little bit, where you think like you need all the staff to handle all this growth, and so we're going to want to take a step back and make sure that we've developed that need. And so part of this is just the planning, but when we actually get to the budget, we're going to need to justify these positions to the council throughout the budget process. So we're not anticipating at this point adding any additional full-time staff in 2021, but just to be kind of ahead of the planning, we're going to have to look at 2022, 23. Probably want to add a couple years on there and get a better idea. But I would say that what you see here is somewhat antiquated and need to be revised.
Okay, great. I'd like to have it taken a look at. 2022 year has some pretty hefty dollar signs attached to those positions. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to be taking another look at it, like to make sure we have what we need, but also are being responsible with what we're outputting. That was all I had.
Okay. Joy, anything from you? No? I went to you guys already. Sorry. Brent, just as a request, for when we see these, can it be presented in a way so that when you're working, so when we go further down into the financials, it doesn't bleed over into a second page to figure out the year? So I'm thinking of like as early as page 12 and 13, where you've got to kind of try to match up the lines or print it out, and it's just hard to see.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
That would be tremendously helpful and save paper when I'm trying to print it out so that I can see. My only question was around the rate increases, and I think we've gone through this before for the water fees, but in the context of our water treatment plant. The rate increases in the plan that we have now will allow us to make our bond payments on this project. Correct.
Bond payments, and then the recommendation from our financial planners is to have 6 months worth of operating and a year's worth of debt service in reserve in order to be kind of meet best practices for financial standards.
Okay, perfect. That was my only question. All right, moving on to item 6, the employee pay scale. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody from the council.
Yeah.
I don't know if I heard from Lori or Joy.
No, Mayor Johnson asked, and I just didn't have any
okay.
questions or input.
Sorry.
It's okay. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
So the next item I wanted to bring up, council, is, Mayor and council, is the employee pay scale. If you remember, in 2019, we switched from a step pay scale system to an open range system. And for kind of some background, that step scale provided basically kind of an automatic 2.75% increase based on year of service. And then traditionally, as it was negotiated in the collective bargaining agreement, a cost of living adjustment. And so as recently as 2019, there was a 4.7% or 4.75% pay increase. And so we negotiated and moved to an open range system, which we feel puts the city in a better position to provide pay based on the economy, market, our current budget conditions, so on and so forth. And what that did is establish a minimum and maximum pay for each of our graded positions. And a pay grade is based on the responsibilities, experience, and education required for each position. And so in 2020, full-time employees received a 3.25% pay increase. In order to keep this scale current, the city agreed in the collective bargaining agreement to adjust the pay scale annually based on the Consumer Price Index calculator, which is found on the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank's website. And so we're always a year behind, so we'll go from 2018 to 2019, which shows a 2% increase. And so in your packet, you can see our current pay scale, which for minimum and maximums for each position. And then in the blue, the adjusted based on that 2%. And so in the past, that step would mean they'd get the 2.75% and then plus that 2% of kind of COLA or cost of living adjustment. In this instance, it's still capped at whatever we negotiated. In this instance, for 2021, it's 3.5%. And so the increase to the scale is only impactful to the folks that are at the maximum, because under the current scale, if we wouldn't make this adjustment, there would be theoretically some folks that would cap out at maybe a 1.5% or 2% increase because they've hit the max. So this pay scale adjustment, which was negotiated, keeps raising that scale based on market indicators, in this case, the Consumer Price Index. So just wanted to kind of connect with the council on this prior to bringing it to a regular meeting to see if there was any questions. I know it's been a while since we've discussed this topic.
Questions, comments?
Actually, more just like timing, and that you just said it's been a while since we discussed. And maybe this will be what's presented, like when's the last time we discussed? And only because I feel like this comes up a lot. Like if we make some changes, revisions, do we have this figured out now for 10 years or?
No, this is
Or is this just part of a process and we do this at a certain time frame?
Yep, it's done annually, so that's
Okay.
probably why it seems like a lot.
Welcome to the budgeting process.
So I
It
can't
seems
wait
like
10
we're always
years?
talking
Like-
about it.
Okay, sorry, I'm like thinking corporate pay grades and just a difference. So,
No,
okay.
so I would say sometimes it's been up to 10, but typically every maybe 5 to 6 years, the city will do a pay study where you look
Okay.
at, all of our we have like 10 peer cities, and we'll
Okay.
do an adjustment based on that. So that's that every 5 years or 6
Okay.
years. The adjustment on that scale is based on the CPI, the Federal Reserve, and the benefit to that, even though sometimes these conversations are challenging, is that when we go back to do that market study in 5 or 6 years, if we kind of leave this scale static, we'll be in a position where we'll find ourselves probably 10%. Let's just say for 5 years at 2%, we find ourselves at 10% below market, and then we have our union trying to negotiate that 10% in one bite in one budget year. So this is more of an incremental approach.
Okay, no, thanks for explaining that. I wasn't separating the two. So. Okay. No other questions, and I know it'll come up again in a year.
They'll come up again at your next
Well,
meeting,
yeah.
and then another year.
Joy, I see you with your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. So when is the when do we go through the
Yeah, so it's implemented with the 2021 budget. So if the council, whatever the council adopts as the 2021 budget at your December meeting, the pay increases are implemented January 1 of the following year.
Gotcha. So this is actually feeding into our 2021 budgeting process.
Correct. And so we,
Got it.
as you all know, we have probably, I'd say, roughly half of our staff is represented by a collective bargaining unit. And so traditionally what the council has done is matched whatever the collective bargaining unit gets with non-represented staff. And so 2019 it was, 2020, 3.25, 2021, 3.5. And then we'll be heading into a negotiating year in 2021.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Christy. Okay. So we had, if I'm reading this correctly, so it was a 3.25% pay increase last year.
Right.
And they're asking for 3.5% this year.
You've already, the council agreed to that in the collective bargaining
Okay.
agreement, so you agree, it was a 2-year agreement.
Okay.
3.25 year one, 3.5 year two.
Okay, all right. I was just wondering with the economy why that was going up this year, because things are not as they were, so. And then for our fire department, obviously this is for full-time staff only. Does any of this affect the fire department at all? The collective bargaining agreement does not. Have we talked about salaries about the fire department for next year, or is that coming up?
That'll come in the 2021 budget.
Okay,
Traditionally, we've mirrored, so if there was a 3% increase, we've done that for the, part-time salary, part-time hourly pay as well.
okay,
But again, that's the council's prerogative. We'll have a draft, first draft of the 2021 budget. I believe it's your second work session in August.
okay. And can you tell me what the per hour rate for the fire department is right now?
Not
If you,
from
that's fine.
memory.
Okay, okay.
It's around
Kelly,
that.
do you know off the top of your head?
I think it's like, I want to say 12 something. Is Callie on the line?
He is, he's, thank you.
Thank you, yes. It is. And thank you for running into burning buildings for $12.40 an hour.
Well, and that said, well, we're not paying our firefighters enough. Brent's done a good job over his tenure
Oh,
here of making sure that that comes up from the $8 that they were probably
Right,
earning when
right.
you started, so.
Right, I am not in any way saying that we don't appreciate it, or that any staff or Brent or whoever is not supportive, but I just think that I want to say thank you again for doing that, for what you guys put into that, for what you guys are getting paid. Thank you.
Glenn, did you have anything? Okay. The only thing that I had, thank you, Brent, for anticipating my question about the length of the collective bargaining agreement. I wasn't sure when that was coming around again. Speaking of things that seem to come around again and again, right? How many employees are at the top of the scale right now? Is it just 2?
From off the top of my head, I think we have 4.
4, okay. Okay, I was just curious about that. Yeah, that's the only question that I had. Otherwise, this looks good. Thanks for bringing it to front of mind.
So I'll be bringing this back for your consideration at your August 3rd meeting.
Perfect. All right, let's see. Moving on to the city manager's report.
I really just have one update. It seems like just yesterday, Erin went on maternity leave, but we're expecting her back Thursday. So all those planning
Time flies in
questions,
quarantine.
all those planning and development questions you've been holding on to, call at 8:01.
Oh, you're cruel. So cruel.
So, but it'll be great to have her back. We're, again, like all of our team, we're encouraging working remotely, especially considering the position that she's in. But I know she's anxious to at least touch base here at City Hall a few days to get back into the swing of things. So it'll be great to have her back.
Awesome. Any council member communications, council requests?
I did just want to say thanks for having Larry discuss with HPC, because that was something I was gonna bring up, but it looks like we already had a nice discussion on it, so we don't have to go any farther into it right now. For Steamboat Days, I know we're all wondering, and so it's not August yet, so we claim that August would be, the beginning of August would be when we would make that decision. The group is going to be getting together here shortly for our first meeting since February. So yeah, so we have a few things to discuss, obviously. There are some ideas if the governor doesn't lift his restrictions. We want to discuss a few other things. We're hopeful, but again, it is what it is. So please look for some more information in early August. That's all I have.
I'm going to save my communications updates. Well, I guess council requests. Any other? All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to, oh, you know what, before we make a motion to adjourn, I just want to kind of reiterate for those who dialed in on the meeting. Again, you guys are all welcome to join us at 7 o'clock for the city council meeting. Item number 4 on the agenda is community comment. And that's a standing agenda item every other week when we meet. On our council agenda, which members of the community are allowed to address council. We haven't had a straight up official work session since the beginning of March, so we're kind of getting back into the swing of things too. But the work sessions truly are just kind of for educational purposes and kind of council information. So we receive all the information in the work sessions, and then we make the vote and make the decisions on items at our regular council meetings. So this meeting will end in just a few minutes here, and then the other city council meeting will begin at 7 o'clock or probably 5 minutes before, where you can dial in online. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Sayer and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? Mr. Mayor, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Mock,
Aye, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer,
Aye, Lori Sayer.
Councilmember Henry,
Aye, Glenn Henry.
Councilmember McKnight,
Aye, Joy McKnight.
and Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. Motion passes. Talk to you all in a few minutes.